We will begin the meeting of the Village of North Bennington Board of Trustees for Tuesday, June 13, 2017. And we will start with a review and approval of the minutes of May 9.
I consider there are only three there. One of us has to make that motion, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll abstain. Obviously.
Same. Okay. Citizen comments. Are you here to observe, or do you have something?
I'm here because I spoke with Norm, who said I could pick up a check for the bond money, and I...
Oh, okay.
I-
Okay. Give us 1 second here.
Sure.
Why do I immediately go? We gotta do the warrants first. I always jump right over the warrants. 1 second. People got copies of that?
Yes. Do you want to explain the?
The warrants, are you talking about the
Yeah.
warrants now? Okay, okay, let's do the general warrant first.
Mm-hmm.
I will resend the spreadsheet out so that you have the correct warrant, and the second tab of that, which is the details, I'll send that out. The reason it is changed is just an hour ago, we received the, appears to be the final reconciliation from Kelly Fuel, showing a total due as of 5/25/17, which should be as current as it gets, of $239.30. Thus, the last check on the warrant, which you will sign, is for $239.30. The previous check, which had been printed the other day, is voided. In this reconciliation, the estimates that we had been paying, the fire department was underestimated by $885. I'm not mentioning the cents. The garage has an $11 credit, and this building has a $634 credit.
Fantastic.
So we should be.
So it was a pretty good estimate all along. Didn't
Yes.
change things too much.
Yes, and you know what? It can change for, that's such a little amount, we'll
Yeah.
just use the same estimates
Yep.
next year.
And basically
Which
what's
we've
up-
already budgeted for.
Yeah, and Kelly Fuel does that for us.
Cool.
What they do is they go through, they look at average temperature, they look at what we use per building, they'll look at what we had for a credit, and then they'll adjust, so they'll come up with.
They'll tweak
Okay.
the firehouse one a little bit.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
If I could mention just a couple of other things on the
Mm-hmm.
warrant that you're signing there with the blue sticky. There are, Mark, your 2 invoices,
Yep.
your J-Pro. The Wausau tile is actually not an invoice, so when you get that actual invoice, can we just make sure to get a copy?
I'm not sure that I will get that invoice because I didn't do that. So either
Okay.
Lori will get that invoice, or
Okay.
it might go to David and Rachel.
Okay,
I just went through and
All
okayed
right,
the fact that
yeah,
I was going to
because
Park and
what
Rec,
that-
and then
yeah.
I set David and
okay.
Rachel up with Lori, and they did the actual.
Okay.
So I won't get that invoice.
All right, well
Someone
then
will.
I'll just have to follow up, because all I know is we're paying some company called Wausau Tile.
And that's
There's no
for-
address, there's no nothing
It's
on
for
it.
the benches.
It is,
Yeah.
but we should have some document
Yes,
saying
that
who
would be
we're
nice.
paying. In addition, that document was a quote that was requesting signature. They also said in that, in the fine print, that they wanted a copy of our tax exempt thing, so I faxed that off to them, so we will not be charged sales tax. I noticed that was not on the J-Pro, which is good.
Yeah, did you not get the email that, there was an email that David and Rachel sent all of us, I believe, that had the park benches attachment to it. I thought it went to everybody, I know I got it.
I don't.
It was supposed to go to all of us, if not, I can forward that, and that
Yeah.
must have the,
Yeah, I thought I
Yeah,
saw a
I saw
picture of it.
yeah, so the picture had, the
Yeah.
thing, so it must have the company name and address
Yeah.
on it, if that helps.
Well, it just would be, and the other thing is, this was just kind of a request, so I don't know if there's gonna be any delivery charge or shipping or
It was
anything
built into
like
the
that.
price, all that's built into that
Okay,
price.
just so that eventually we can have something, because this will be set up as an asset at some point in time
Yeah.
when we go through our.
Sure. And
our
just,
things.
if you send me an email, I'll check with David
Okay.
to see if he's got it
Okay.
or Lori, but one of them will have that because they just got
Okay.
delivery.
And, let's see, the other thing I wanted to know, oh, the Green Mountain flagging, that just needs to be reclassified, but I'll do that, and then when I send out the final, you'll see it in the proper account.
Do you want a motion on that, guy?
So we need a motion to accept the warrant, the standard warrant for the, as modified,
Okay, I'll make
of 34045.79.
Yep, I'll make that motion that we approve the warrant for $34,045.79.
Second?
Discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Payroll warrant?
Your payroll warrant is going to look a little bit different, and we can have some discussion when Lori gets back about our payroll accounts. Long story short, I'm not using the same payroll subscription that I used to use because I'm not doing any bookkeeping for anybody else other than the village now, so I can't use what I used to use for other people. So we're now on just the QuickBooks Online version of payroll.
Okay.
It is a little different, much more getting used to. Couple of things that are different is that I have to use only one account. Now, historically, we've had a separate bank account for the highway payroll checks only. And we've used all the other payroll checks, the village and zoning, etc., from the general checking account. The only reason that I know of that we've had that separate highway account is because we used to do a warrant in arrears. In other words, all the checks would be made out, they would come in and you guys would approve, these were the checks that we did previously right. So therefore, Lori had to have a way of having a separate checking account so she could write a check and sign it. We have not done that for several years. You'll notice on these warrants here, what you're looking at are all current and future checks. So there is no reason to have that second account to have a special signatory reason. Secondly, the new subscription, we pay for whether we use it or not, a direct deposit option. So for instance, Lori and I, once a month, direct deposit would probably be nice. Nothing goes into the account until the date it's approved, so we have that safeguard. It's also reconciled, which we have that safeguard. The highway department, I believe, wishes to use that option rather than have to interrupt their day once every Friday and do that. I would not, however, wish to do this for the part-time people who we only pay on occasion. So what I would propose, and I think we should bring Lori into this discussion clearly, is that for those part-time people who occasionally work for the highway, their hours are accumulated. At the end of the month, they're given to Lori. We prepare a check stub. It is paid the following Friday. Thus, it can be on this warrant and approved ahead of time. And again, we avoid the need to have a separate account with a special signatory reason.
Sounds great.
And then we don't run into the issue which we have for the two students who you'll notice they're not on here because neither student is now working. We did all the checks in advance, but sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't, so then we're all swapping and voiding and whatever, so that would avoid that.
Okay.
But hence, I cannot get the same report that I used to because of the way this is now done.
Very good. Is that it for that? Do we need a motion to accept the payroll warrant?
I can make a motion to accept the warrant for $7,600, $7,670.92 for the payroll.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And that's it for warrants.
Oh, no, one more. Sorry, you have your special warrant. That was the third little one on the tab. If you didn't see it,
I
you can
saw
use
it.
this
I
copy.
saw it. I just didn't open it.
This is just to do, it's,
Yeah, it's in there.
I could do it, but I think I'd rather have your
I see.
eyes on it
So
and
this is you
approval.
putting in,
This is just our annual funding of the reserves.
okay.
We did discuss the possibility of using some of the truck reserve, no, the backhoe reserve to cover some of that
The new machine.
new machine. But we can amend that. I think we need to look at where we're gonna end up the year, and then we can adjust
That's
that
fine.
later
I
on if
agree.
you wish.
Yep. So,
Do
a
you,
motion?
you need a motion do we need to list each thing we're funding or
No.
just in that?
Because that's all published. It's just all the reserve funds that we fund annually.
I can make a motion to approve the reserve funding in the amount of $68,500.
Second.
All's in favor? Aye. Done and done. Citizen comments. So you're looking for the check for the bond that you had for,
Yeah, you're supposed to hold it for a year, it's been over a year.
yeah.
Oh, I have
You,
that.
you have it?
Yeah.
We're gonna get this worked out.
I'm glad you showed up because there's nothing on those applications that really shows what address things should eventually go to or when.
It's surprising.
Can you just look at that and make sure that that is you?
That's me.
Good. All done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joy has a citizen comment regarding a bike ride.
Yes, I do. So for those of you who don't know me, you just met recently. I am Joy Kitchell. I'm the executive director of the Bennington County Child Advocacy Center, the Special Investigations Unit. And we are a nonprofit and we serve children throughout the county who are victims of sexual abuse. We assist with the investigations. Sometimes we work with John. We help find appropriate mental and medical support for the children and the families. And we also do a lot of teaching and proactive preventative work in the schools. And because we're a nonprofit, I'm always looking for funding. And I have, my gosh, I think I'm going to be going on my 6th anniversary as the executive director there. And I have been trying to find an event that celebrated family, was healthy, and would draw attention to our organization, but also give us some funding to help us to continue moving forward. And so about a year and a half ago, we came up with an idea to have a bike ride, not a race. And so what I've been working on is a race that offers several options. It offers a family event that's only 2 miles long, a slightly longer challenge for families that's 5 miles, and then we have an 11-mile ride and a 20-mile ride, so that we can get the whole gamut of bicyclists from the county. And right now, I've been working with Chief Doucette. He has approved the route, but I haven't gotten my formal approval yet from the town. So I have draft on this, just so you realize it's not official, but I'm not gonna be here in July, and I really wanted you all to know about it as soon as possible, okay? So, I gave you a brochure for those of you who don't know what I do, so you'll know what we do. And then, the paper inside is just a highlight of what the event's going to be. I have spoken to Norm, and he's pretty confident that he can have Park Street in some decent riding conditions for us. Do you want an extra copy for Lori?
Yes, please.
Okay, and then do you
Yeah,
want?
or whoever's
I
taking
got
it.
it, I got it.
No, okay.
I have one too.
I'm just taking the checks too.
So, I've spoken to Tim from the village school, and we're gonna start at the village school. And for the family ride, it's an up and back, so it's, for folks can only go about 2 miles into the McWaters Park and come back, so that they can judge how far they want to go, depending on how old their kids are, what their bicycles are like. The 5 mile would be Park Street, Henry Bridge, to the Paper Mill Bridge, and then back. Again, just an up and back, so if folks need to turn back, they can. The longer route starts off like the Bennington Road Race, going around McCullough, Harrington, over all 3 covered bridges, and then out Silk Road, up to the monument, and then we're going to Southern Vermont College. And that'll be for the 20 mile ride. The turnaround will be at the Southern Vermont College up at the top. SVC is on board with supporting us in this event. And then the return would be coming back from Southern Vermont College back to the monument, and then out Woodstock, Derby Road, back to Silk Road, back out Silk Road. I'm trying to work a Bennington College right now, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to go up College Drive, because much safer than going up Rice Lane. And haven't gotten the official.
You can talk to me, I mean, if you need any help, I work at Bennington.
Okay, I will talk, I've got, so Nicole, I've been speaking to Nicole,
Okay,
and she was gonna speak with someone named Angel.
yep, I work with Angel.
And you work with Angel?
I work with
Okay, I
Angel.
thought so.
Yeah,
So I'm just waiting for them to get around back to me,
Okay.
but I'll talk to you after.
okay,
That'd be great.
yeah.
And so it would come around the college, down Prospect, and then back to the school. Southern Vermont College is going to host a barbecue for the families and riders at the school. And I'm hoping to finagle a few law enforcement friends that have done bicycle safety stuff to be there as well. So I'm pretty excited. At this point, we have the Community Bank, formerly Merchants Bank, as our major corporate sponsor. They're on board for that. Southern Vermont College is on board. And at this point, I have enough other local sponsors to cover the expenses for the event. And I'm really excited. I'm really panicked that 100 people are going to show up, and I'm not going to know what to do with them all, but I'm really excited. So I just wanted to let you know what was going on, get some feedback from you about what your thoughts were on this. I did give you lots of ways to get a hold of me. So on the one sheet page, you've got my email address and the phone number. You can knock on my door if you want to. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you looking to promote it a little more as well?
Oh,
Or
yes. Oh, yes.
have you talked to the local, like the biking club?
So I have been holding, well, I've been holding back for 2 reasons. One, I've had laryngitis for 2 weeks, so that was a stopgap for me. But I was waiting on Chief Doucette to finalize his approval before we really started actively promoting it
Because I work with somebody who is
on that list.
involved in that, so if you need a
Okay.
contact,
I would love
I'd rather
that.
not say I can't, but just in case I don't want to again, but
Yeah.
I can put you in touch with somebody who is
That would be great.
very much involved in the bike club, who might be able to promote it through the club.
Yeah, so for the next
And also I'm sorry, also the,
Highlander,
yes,
so I spoke with him about 1.5 years ago when we first started talking about it.
okay.
And so now that we've got it finalized, we're going to go back and have another conversation with him.
Is this where people will sign up and get pledges for them?
No, we're going pretty nominal on the fees. So we're offering a family fee if you have, at least four people from your family riding. We have a team fee, and then our individual fees are $15 for children, and I think $35 for adults. So we're not asking them to do pledges, we're just asking, if they want to have a pledge to pay for their way to go, that's great, but that's just one more piece to add to the mix. And for my first year doing this, I figured it was,
Start simple.
we'll start simple, yes. So,
So you're seeking our endorsement of this idea, or?
I'm hoping for your endorsement and any wisdom that you might have.
Just
which
make
is
sure,
which is why I gave you my email address. So-
just stay in touch with Nor. You know, October can be, just make sure that road is in decent shape, because it would not be a good road to ride on if either he had just graded it or,
I know. So he and I actually talked about that. So he knows what the date is for, and he felt when he and I had a conversation that the date of the race was pretty in line with when he would grade Park Street.
yeah.
And I need to talk to Mr. Jolly, RJ Jolly?
Yeah, RJ.
About the rest of the dirt road, because I really want to make sure that's okay.
Yeah. And he did great. He coordinated very well this year with the
Road
The
race.
road race. Where and he's great about that. He was actually proactive and got a hold of them because he knows about it. So he made sure he knew the date and did it far enough in advance so it wasn't all rattly still. So yeah, he did a great job with the road race and being, you know, working with them. So I'm sure he.
It should work out just fine.
So we're working with I'm working with Bike Reg, which is an online way of for bikers or runners to find out about races. So we're going to be doing so folks can either register online through them, or they can get in contact with us and they can do a check and mail in, or they can register the day of. So, but I'm hoping that you are supportive. The village school is on board with it, which is wonderful. And everyone I've asked so far has had positive things to say, so I'm really excited.
I'd say that I think it's great that you're having a presence in the village school, and I'm sure that you have presence in a lot of the local schools, but we appreciate that, and I know the school does. And I think it's important to recognize that sexual violence is in our communities, in all of our communities, and it affects us all. And especially, we have a college campus in North Bennington, we have our elementary school, and it's just an issue that affects many women and boys too. And it's good to raise the profile of the organization so that people know about it.
Thank you.
So thanks for doing that.
Thanks, Joy.
Any other questions, or?
Stay in touch with us if plans change, or if, just if things kind of come together a little differently, make sure we're aware of that.
I'll do that. And so just let you know, John, some of the teachers are at the village school are all bike enthusiasts, so I have a few bikers that are going to help out with the event, which would be great.
And if you need help, like promoting through the schools and things like that, I'm in all of them. So
Great.
whether it's brochures or anything else, I'm happy to help out.
And I can also pass this along to someone at Bennington College
Okay.
for student interest, and
Great.
I think there would be students.
So,
that
yeah,
would
we're
be
hoping,
interested.
so SBC is coming on board with doing some help and then having some students volunteer, and I'm really hoping.
I'm sure,
Bennington
yeah, I
College
think we
as
could
well.
find some, so I can have your email, so.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's great. Another great fall event for the village. Treasurer's reports.
Oh, yes, as though I didn't say enough. Here you go. Should be enough if there's I did one to Lori. What I did here, this is not exact, but it's close because it has the old Kelly fuel and a few things. But this is where we are with today's expenses, for the most part, where we're gonna end up with the fiscal year. Now, bear in mind, we still have some things that are not in. Right now, as it is right now, we are within 20,000 of the total budget, all in, for the fiscal year. We still have we have at least 1 month's worth of, for the most part, we have 1 month's worth of utility bills that are not in. I was looking at the actual bills for most things, went through May 24th, which does give us, a month left. The street lights didn't have a date on it though, so I'm guessing that's the same, that it's, you know, a month behind, so we'll have them. But, the wages should be up to date, because again, look, when you looked at the payroll warrant, that was everything through the day, through the 6/30/17 day worked. So that should be good there. There's always a few things, so I can tweak this as we get the rest of our expenses in, see if there's anything that needs to be accrued or deferred in the expenses that we have here. And we'll be headed towards wrapping it up. But right now, we should come in, given that we still have things outstanding, right about on what we budgeted overall.
Yeah.
Some departments will be a little bit more, some a little bit less, but we're right there.
That's great.
Fantastic. Don't know that I've ever seen that before.
Well, hopefully we will make it a
I noticed,
regular habit.
for highway.
Yes.
Highway maintenance was some of that deferral so that, to help with buying the sidewalk tractor?
Yes, it was.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Good.
That's not a category thing?
Well, no, that can go to, the highway department has to stay in the highway.
The highway has to stay in
No,
the
but,
highway.
I mean,
But-
that it's under highway there's several other maintenance categories that were over budget but then there's highway maintenance that was way under, so I'm just thinking does that normally offset, or was there some reason that, maintenance was so?
Well, normally, I think, Norm, not speaking for Norm, but I would suspect that he would love to be able to repair, and invest in his full budget. But if you notice that we've spent close to $30,000 on that, sidewalk tractor. And so he didn't want to go over budget, so he elected to stop
I'm
spending
sure,
things.
and absolutely, that he recognized there were other line items that were gonna
Right,
be very over.
exactly.
But like, for instance, vehicle maintenance and gas and oil weren't budgeted for and then had significant costs.
Yes,
That used to be in highway
Yes.
maintenance.
it used to add all of those, equipment, equipment maintenance, vehicle maintenance, gas and oil, all were lumped under equipment maintenance.
Right.
In the last budget that we did, we broke it out, but we hadn't in this one.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
I have a question.
Yes,
So, and I'm gonna ask this as succinctly as I can. So when I look at the revenue versus expenditure, I see revenue that looks like it's over by about 95,000 or whatever,
Right.
without looking at that. Excuse me, expenditures that are over and
Yes.
revenue that's over. Is that largely the way that the highway projects grants shake out, that we did the retaining wall and spent a bunch of money, but we also had revenue of 126,000 that we didn't necessarily
correct.
budget for?
It's that and the other 30-some thousand dollars that the state provides for the highway funding.
Gotcha. So that's the additional revenue and the additional expense
Correct.
essentially in that category?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Bill.
Great, thank you.
I'm surprised, yeah, salt hit us again this year, didn't it?
Now, yeah, I mean, the grant projects, we do have to cover the 10% of all of that, which is what shows there.
I think might be 20 now.
Well, it depends, it was
Yeah.
10 on this one that we did.
Right.
Um,
Several.
There was another grant project that we just did?
Well, we're getting ready for this.
We've gotten the depot roof grant, but, and then on the menu today is the upper main sidewalk, hopefully that we'll get.
Oh, but that won't be.
Just
in
future.
this
It's not in
one.
here, this is just future stuff.
Oh, I'm thinking.
And for those, we're at 20%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You didn't
No,
want
the
to-
reason we were 10 on that one is because it was kind of the emergency retaining wall situation and the money came from a different source, so. Okay, any other questions?
No, so I assume that before we adjourn, we'll set one last meeting that we usually do, a very
Yeah.
quick meeting at the end of the month, at which point then I can show you a little bit more clearly
More detail.
what this looks like, as well as where our funds are lining up, and then look at a projection between
Now in November.
now and when our tax revenue starts coming in.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah.
Highway facilities, Norm has taken the week off, which is a good thing with his extra hours that he needs to use. It's his birthday today, I'm sure you'd want everybody to know that.
Yet another reason not to come.
DRB, I don't really know much I know that, they've been dealing with the Water Street project, and you attended that hearing?
I was at the hearing. I also went to the Act 250 review meeting, hearing, I guess.
That was this
too.
last week?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I think. And so they're under Act 250 review right now. The DRB has approved the project, so our local review board has approved it. There were a couple of conditions to the approval, but the project is apparently meeting those conditions. And then the Act 250 Review Commission issued some preliminary requirements or requests. I'm not sure if they're requests or requirements, but so I guess they're going to be complying with that at the same time as submitting requested information, additional information that came out at the hearing that they wanted to have before they made a final decision on the permit. So there was some vegetation that had been removed north of the project within the town's waterway easement area, I guess 100 feet from the water. So they asked that be reseeded and, put back to the way it was. And then there also, one of the other concerns was there was testimony from Mr. Cooch, the neighbor, that said that he had remembered that the building had been built on stilts essentially, and that the water would be able to flow underneath the building, and that it was not, obviously there's no way to determine whether that's accurate or not, and he remembered it that way, but it was alleged that that area had been filled in so that it was sort of channeled into one area. But it seems to me, in my review of the process, is that they need approvals on a building that goes over a waterway anyway, so that's all being reviewed, and he is having regular inspections by fire safety marshal and on the construction side, and plumbing and stuff like that.
And I ran into Jason this evening, and the engineer on the project and design engineers. He said that they'll be coming back to us regarding a crosswalk that is going to be necessary up on Ace's Way.
Yeah, I think that's one of the DRB conditions.
Yeah, which I have no problem with. The college has purchased one parcel of land across from this project on Scary to give an access point, and they're going to lease or purchase a parcel up on Ace's Way that then connects directly to the back of the tennis courts, essentially.
Great.
And there'll be walking paths, stairs, and then crossing Ace's Way and then going on down to. And it seemed like a low impact way to have students moving back and forth, because there's certainly not enough parking places for them all. So I said whenever he's ready what he said is he's gonna probably send a letter, a template, for us to sign and approve, that they can submit showing our approval of that recommendation.
There was one issue, and you just reminded me of it, is that the village may have a concern about, is that the entrance of Scary Lane onto 67 or Water Street right there is pretty dangerous. So you're taking your life in your hands if you try and make a left out of Scary Lane. So most people just take a right and then turn around at the church and come back the other way. And even if you're taking a right, you really have to just go fast. And it says, there is a sign that says no left turn.
Yes.
I'm
Is
not
there?
sure if we
There is.
actually put that up or if it's just a private sign.
No, I think the state put it, I think, so
Somebody put it.
that's been a thorn for a long time. When they fixed that bridge, and we did that first initial Water Street project 10 years ago. In the plans initially was to shave down that whole,
It seems like it could be low,
they could lower it, but you'd have retaining walls for the houses across the
yeah.
street and things like that. And the last meeting we had with the people who are doing the next paving project, Water Street, next year, said,
Oh, that's already been,
that's not happening.
gotcha.
So,
All right.
yeah, it's a scary little spot, and I usually do make the left. And if you go way over to the right, you can get a pretty good view and have as much time as you need, but yeah.
But so the concern is not necessarily that, the safety of that intersection, because that is what it is. The concern is, or there was raised the issue of on move-in day, if there's 22 units in that building with several students per unit, that there would be a lot of vehicles there on the one day, and it would just be constant
That's not
in
good.
and out. And so there was definitely assurances from the college stating that they would be providing security.
You can do a rent-a-cop there for that day, and
Right, because it wouldn't be an ongoing, I mean, the parking is limited to a permit,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't be an ongoing thing, hopefully, but it was certainly a concern for that,
Yeah.
for those one move in and move out.
thanks for keeping up on that, John. Fire department, I do not have anything. Water board, I do not have anything. New business. Is this you, John?
Yep. So we have I'm proposing a resolution that we sign that's identical essentially to one that we signed last summer about the same time. I'm a few weeks ahead of schedule as I was last time, but so it just states that we are seeking to improve the pedestrian and bicycle transportation facilities of the village, and we are particularly concerned about the appearance and safety of Main Street sidewalks. We have already been awarded $145,800 under the Vermont Agency of Transportation Bicycle and Pedestrian Program grant, but estimated construction and engineering costs exceeded the award amount. So we got the grant, and then it went to engineers to determine exactly how much it was going to cost, not estimate, and then it was more than, quite a bit more. So it wasn't something that the village could just pick up or something. It really is necessary to have additional funding. So the Agency of Transportation has invited application under the 2017 Bicycle and Pedestrian Program for this purpose, and so we are resolving to that the Board of Trustees endorse the application that I will make and submit to the Vermont Agency of Transportation in the amount for an additional $79,000 for the installation of sidewalks, curbing, and green space along Main Street from Depot Street, right here, north to the village line. And then there's a small section on Houghton, from Houghton Street to Kevin's,
Right.
on the south side. So, and it's actually, I just said this, but John Lamson would have the authority to execute and provide all the documents necessary for the application. and the village is gonna be providing the matching funds of 20% of, and any amount up to 79,000. So 79 is I think that's gonna be the application amount, so it would be 20% of 79, but, and that's pretty solid because the estimate's not different this year than it was last, so it's been consistent over a year, so I think that's a good number.
And how much did we get in the first grant?
145,800.
So that's a $30,000 commitment, and then this is an additional 20% of that is
14,
another
15.
14 or 15.
Was the original for 20% match too, you remember?
That probably was.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
Well, we have, that's kind of what we've been holding into our.
is that what we're gonna use? Because we'll have $33,000 in the sidewalk reserve. And that's what we would use
Yes.
for part of this?
Although-
Okay.
We have some sidewalk projects of our own that we're hoping to do this summer too, so. This isn't gonna happen tomorrow.
Oh,
In fact,
no.
this won't
No,
happen.
I just,
This would be.
There'll be another,
This won't be until, not the next budget season, but the following budget
Oh,
season.
serious?
I assume.
probably.
By the time the grants, I mean, if they're just opening up the applications now, by the time the grant is accepted.
How much do we put in each year to the sidewalk?
3,000.
Well, next year we might do
So,
more. In
yeah,
anticipation of this,
yeah.
we might do a.
So is there any like statute of limitations of time on that 145,000?
Not as long as we're continuing to pursue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is, but just by doing this, we
It
keep it
extends
alive
it.
for
Oh,
another.
good.
So as long as we keep moving what they consider forward, then it can go on indefinitely almost, within reason.
That would be great to have it done.
We did it for 12 years with
That's what I
the.
mean.
Yeah.
Well, I
Probably.
don't.
We don't know yet.
We don't, yeah, we would hear about, I think they approve the grants in like late September or October. So we won't even know until this
So
season's already
certainly
gone,
summer.
and we probably would not be able to organize.
Right.
It's federally
Yeah.
subsidized, so it's,
And as we look at our budget next year, if we see that there's some, we need to shift something here or there, we can do it.
and so this is important that we do accept, and we've done this already on the other part of it, so this is a formality really, but we are accepting responsibility for future maintenance of the sidewalk that will be built, obviously. So,
So do you need a motion? Do we need to vote on that, or we just need to sign
We just
it?
need to sign it.
Technically, what's correct?
that's.
Well, I'll make
I
a
guess there's
motion
no
to accept
harm
the
in-
resolution.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Alright. Always better err on that side.
Yeah, better.
We're double covered that way.
Great.
Can I get a copy?
That would be
Oh, yeah.
great if that happened.
Well, she's gonna need the original.
So that's the one that, we could have actually had some done, but they wouldn't let us divide it up because it wasn't part of the original grant, but we had it divided up, so.
Oh,
And we actually thought we were doing it the right way,
numbers,
by
you mean.
proposing it in sections that we could shape things on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've been talking about that for 10
All right, I
years,
just.
longer. He's breaker table.
Or maybe I fixed it.
Norm's looking for one. Other new business? Old business?
I think that goes back over.
Bill, I know, think this is your,
Yes. So, and I'll let you jump into it because you and I have chatted about this briefly, so we cover it. So about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we decided to look into, and I think prompted originally by trying to have better coordination with the Bennington Police Department, bringing up an issue which you'd find probably in other factions of the resources we share with the town of Bennington. But it's difficult for them to show up when there's a call from a citizen about problem X, because then they have to know both ordinances. It just becomes a challenge for them to actually enforce. So we looked at, what we did is we said, okay, well, what would happen if we tried to adopt similar ordinances? And we started, and I think the three of us, along with Janice and David, read all of the ordinances, like 14 or 1600 pages of ordinances. that Bennington has to find out if we thought they were generally acceptable, because the other side to that too is if we start to co-opt Bennington's ordinances, there's a team of people who are actually working on that, whereas we don't necessarily have that. So I think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that we thought that all of them were fine generally. I think we were hung up a little on how specific the construction documents were, which were the ones that we read, which were 800 of there was more than half of them were just construction specifications. Since then, we've talked about the fact that if we did adopt something like that going forward, you don't want to go out and have somebody have to redo their recent project. You would just do it going forward. So we were just talking about that because we started looking into what are the actual mechanisms in North Bennington for, let's say you finish your construction project, how does that get inspected for occupancy? It's not right now. There's electrical and there's plumbing, but there's no occupancy inspection. How does that end up back in the lister's office so that it gets assessed again? We don't actually, and I want to look into this. The way I understand it, we may not have the tools to kick all that off. So it was, as a first step, should we start to find out if we want to move towards adopting the ordinances, and then are there any other steps that we want to consider taking as part of this, and how do we do all this? So that was where it was, so I think I'm bringing it up because personally, I was fine adopting the ordinances. So there's some of you that are new that you may want to actually look into this, and then if everybody's okay with that, I actually want to go talk to the town of Bennington, probably a few different offices, and get some sense of what their thoughts are on the whole thing, and maybe learn a little bit more.
Yeah, and I agree that to the degree that we can do this, I think it's a great idea to align these things, because for years it's always been, well, we don't have a copy of your ordinances. We've given them many copies of the ordinances, but they always end up in the wrong person's hands, or the police don't have them, and I know we've delivered them to the police department, but anyway, it got to where you'd have one officer very cooperatively helping with a dog situation, and another one saying, I have no jurisdiction to do this, and so there's not much coordination. So there's got to be some of that building of relationship, and then looking at what things might be just not appropriate for our size of community. I will say that years ago, we had meetings here with Bennington, town manager, and we were dealing with the same issues, health inspections, this and that, any sort of alignment, and we were told at one point that, and I'm just recapping history, trying to load this one way or the other, we were told, well, if you just adopt this stuff, everything will be fine. We then said, okay, theoretically, we're going to do this, and then we were told that Bennington is not staffed enough to do the job for us. Anyway, that's in the minutes somewhere. So what they're really saying is, even though you pay 8% of our budget for each of those offices in tax revenue, that they weren't going to agree to necessarily carry out that duty for us on our behalf. And that's when things got pretty testy, and it was like, well, then what then it circles back to why we're paying this money then, and maybe we shouldn't be, so that we can be having our own enforcement of those things. And then it just, then it just simmered down, because nobody really wanted to confront those harsh realities. And maybe things have changed, maybe they've got better staffing. It is my contention, and I will always maintain that if we are paying for 8% of the salaries of the people in those offices, which we are, into the general fund of Bennington, that we should be getting those services. So that's just the history of it. I don't think it'll be as easy as just saying, okay,
Right.
And then the stuff that came up with the building stuff is that, frankly, there was some pushback of whether or not we wanted to require people in the community to do all of the things above the safety things that make a whole lot of sense, with regard to building permits. In defense of Bennington, in light of those conversations we had, we still did get not official legal support, But we did get some very good opinion and participation of the health inspector in the community when we dealt with some of the legal issues we had in town over the last few years, and that office has been great, but they could not in an official capacity citate, to give citations to, or because they were not allowed to by their superior. So yeah, I think it's worth going there and having that discussion. People who are new to it should look over those. It gets to, if we start adopting their sound ordinance or whatever, I mean, just using an example. And so now we've got this tool that we're saying to Bennington, get over here and, run your decibel meter. That will drive them nuts, right? It's not, I get that it would just, if a citizen in this community felt like, that motorcycle at 6 in the morning every day comes screaming down Main Street, I think maybe there's other ways of dealing with it. First of all, trying to use these kinds of methods of metrics of violation aren't necessarily do very well in court, or I think it can be a waste of time for people. And sometimes, and maybe this isn't the perfect example, but when I get a million calls about something, the answer is, you live in a community, can you start by talking to your neighbor? That dog, can you go over, maybe that neighbor doesn't know that dog's got a problem. And the impulse is to call one of us or the police. And I think that's just almost people have to work stuff out. Ordinance or not. But I'm in full support of re-entering into this, open it all up, taking a look. And I assume others are too.
Yeah, no, I thought at one point we actually kind of decided we were going to go forward and do this for the most part anyway, and then.
I think we did, except for the building.
Right. So I think if we got that our heads wrapped around that, I have no problem, and I fully support kind of aligning. It just makes more sense.
So I think I would propose then that what I would ask then is that if we're going to move forward, that you two get up to speed on what Bennington's ordinances are and see if you have any problems with them or whatever. I mean, just another set of eyes, but also I'd like it if somebody can join me whenever I speak with Bennington, just so we can get more questions out there on the table, so I can just send out an email if I can set up.
Because I think that's the second part. The second part is, can we anticipate and expect their services?
Right.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Right. Well, this is only one side of the conversation, so
Right.
that's why I want to actually have the conversation with them and see what they're thinking, what their thoughts are. Well, I'm getting the sense that they would appreciate this, which would be great if that was the case.
I can see a benefit without enforcement, because if you have an ordinance, like I've been in a couple situations, like you say, somebody's more apt to call us than the neighbor. But if you can approach the neighbor and say, hey, that there's an ordinance that says that you're not really supposed to park in that area, is there a different place, or maybe a little further down the road, or did you know that this is a public parking area, that you could go there and it's not that long of a walk or whatever? So it's a sort of a conversation starter, or a mild, milder version of like issuing a citation or something. And so it's not necessarily so that you can call the enforcement on somebody, but rather that you can just use it as a tool.
Yes, but to be clear, I don't think there's that many examples where they have an ordinance that we don't.
Okay.
I
haven't seen them, so I'll just do that.
They just might be different,
Okay.
which then creates the confusion if they're going to be enforced.
Gotcha.
But until the truth of the matter though, if we don't align, we have very little ways to enforce the ordinance we have, because we ourselves cannot enforce the ordinances with a punitive.
Right.
Because it's so. I think if we're gonna have a set of ordinances without enforcement, then we really don't have a set of ordinances.
We can't
Right.
find. Somebody?
Well.
I don't think it's
it depends on-
clearly,
It depends on what it is. So if you have a traffic violation that isn't consistent with Bennington or whatever, open container, something that isn't consistent, we would need to go, I think, perhaps either go educate the police on that in the moment, or exercise what the charter allows us to do to have a deputy or somebody who was actually authorized within the village to issue the citation, which obviously could, like I think probably somehow the DRB could get involved for certain types of zoning problems, but obviously they wouldn't deal with others.
I want some clarity from them, when one response is, oh, just provide us with your ordinances and we'll enforce them,
Yeah.
then goes to, sorry, we can't enforce them because they're not our ordinances, to, even if you adopt our ordinances, we're not going to enforce them.
Yeah.
Those three things have all been said.
Okay.
So, and by different people and by different boards, I mean, I think going before the actual select board is probably the way to do it. They instruct the town manager how to run the office, pretty much, do they not?
but I think the right place to start is start small. And I'd be happy to do this with you. Great, you mentioned, I'm
Thank you.
more than happy to do it. Start small, get a feel for those different positions and then go,
Mhm.
take it up as far as we
Absolutely.
need to take it up.
Okay, I'm on it. Also, let you keep me posted and let
Yeah.
you know what
Put a call into Stu or Dan. Maybe a meeting with Stu, Dan, Larry, and the chair of the
Well, Paul too.
and Paul, and a chair of the select board, to kind of,
Tom Jacobs.
is he the chairman? Yeah. Maybe Tom and another, a couple. I think this came out of the concern ultimately of I mean, this is a bigger issue than what got us started on this, is that I always assumed that when somebody builds a house in town, and when it's done and they're occupying it, because the listers are in Bennington, that they do an assessment. And it turns out, according to your research, that doesn't occur.
If you build it new, it would get
No.
assessed, but if you went out and got a building permit and quadrupled the size of your house, there's no trigger at the end of that for anybody to come in and issue a certificate of occupancy, let alone come in and reassess it for quadruple the value. That the tools aren't there to do that. As I understand it, so I may look into this and find out that that's not the case. But when I looked at it just at the top, at a high level, I was like, I think that this is actually true.
I think that's if you paid cash, right?
No, I
But
think
if you
that
have
A mortgage, if you've got,
if you have a recorded mortgage, then I think they do.
I don't think there's anything that triggers it. I think that technically there's three things that trigger an
Because
assessment.
the bank does their own, the bank will do the assessment, but that's not a tax
That's
Well,
assessment.
that's an appraisal.
That's right.
So the town, the
So they
assessment,
the mortgage company only appraises so they know what to require you to insure, but that has nothing to do with the tax rate.
Right, but it gets recorded on the town, in the town records and the town.
that's for a sale though. So look at it in the reverse way. The only three things that would trigger an assessment in North Bennington, I think, a reassessment would be, or any assessment would be new or sale. I think sale can trigger it, but a new property would obviously build it. The state, the last one that I know of in North Bennington that was done was actually in 2004, 5, 6, something like that.
You
It
mean
was
a-
ordered by the legislature, or if the owner grieves it. Those three things are
that was
when the
a
lister's
village-wide.
office would come and start to reassess something. If those don't happen, it doesn't happen.
it's not just state mandated, the town, well, it's mandated in that if your CLA goes to a certain point, the town is then required to redo,
Gotcha.
is to have
That's
another
what it is,
assessment.
Yeah.
And they haven't done that since
It's been a while.
2001 or something.
It was after that. It was I remember it was right after the lounge went in. It was, or the same year. It would have been 2003.
Okay.
I think.
There was a couple times there where they did it because prices were going up so fast that they did them a couple years in a row and then it stopped. And haven't done one since, so. So that's what y'all need to find out.
Are you saying there's no trigger in Bennington?
In
as well?
North Bennington.
Or
So
just in
I
North
think in
Bennington? There is a
Bennington, if you
system
get a
for-
building permit,
Okay.
when your building
But
permit is
that-
done, they actually come through and there's a process by which they start, they issue they do an inspection or issue a certificate of occupancy.
Right.
The
Yes,
CO
this
is
is safe,
issued.
you have the right number of egresses, you have all the things that you need to have a building, not just plumbing and electrical.
Right.
In North Bennington, I don't think that trigger happens. You get a building permit, you build it, and that's that. You need to make sure and have the plumbing inspector, and I think the electrical inspector, and probably the fire inspector come through, but those people aren't tied to the town.
And
the
keep
same
in
way.
mind, if you're building a house, gutting a house and rebuilding it, and even adding a second floor, if it's on the same footprint, there's not even a permit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So, oh yeah.
Yeah.
just-
Yeah.
There is something
I
that's
did.
signed off by the DRB after the permit, correct?
I don't know that. That's what I want to find
I
out.
know that, I know that an individual that I'm aware of was waiting on, I thought it was a certificate of some sort to say that he had said that his project was complete and then was given a letter by the DRB saying that it was.
But again,
I
that
thought
may
it
not
was-
tie back.
But even
to
so,
the
that's our
Bennington.
DRB, and there's no document then goes to
Right.
town and says,
Right.
since you do the
Reassess.
assessment.
Right, right.
It wasn't related to the town.
Right.
At least as I understand it. So I actually want to connect all these dots and figure out what is the process for all of these different things.
Well, I think you're right, because there has almost never been a change in our assessed values.
Right. And I want to look
Some
into
years
why.
that I've
I wanna
done it. I
understand
don't
why.
believe.
Well,
there
why is because the town has never done an official one that changes everybody's assessed
Well-
values. Mine's been the same. My assessed value on my house has been the same since 2003.
Because we haven't hit the threshold where
That's
we're
right.
required to do so, but I do believe, because I'm thinking of a couple of properties where there have, I've seen permits come in and work done, but I'd go back and look, but I'll guarantee you there's no change in the tax assessment. I
Right.
think
So
you're
some
right.
people we know in town have done a decent expansion of their property.
I have no comment on that.
But I'm saying we could ask them if they
Right.
were reassessed.
We could test it though.
Well, I actually can tell you because we did a big revamp of Powers and nobody came through after that. I mean, the electrical inspector did, the plumbing inspector did, it was overseen by an architect, but at no point in time was there any connection to the town
Right.
or any, let's close this out now.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's been other projects too, so.
That could add up. to-
Yeah,
to
well,
lost
and the thing is,
revenue.
it may not matter, but we
Right.
should actually have a process, and I think what we're lacking is a process.
Yeah. Bill, thank you for being on that and,
And being honest.
and go forward with that. Other old business?
I have two issues. One is, speaking of enforcement and fines and all that, I think we definitely need to do something about the building on Main Street that's vacant and in a serious state of disrepair, and it is a public hazard at this point, in my opinion, that now a tree has fallen onto the building. And I think that's very dangerous, and it needs to be either,
Yeah, okay.
if they're not gonna do anything, then we need to take action to either condemn the property or just start fining it.
If you can find, I would like you to investigate what legal rights we have, because, I've talked to them extensively and tried to talk to them twice in the last month about the most recent, and been unsuccessful. What I keep being told is that the house is in limbo, it's switching between this. I know, but if they're,
it takes a fine every day or every month to get them to move their.
and please find out if that is something we can do.
I think
Who assesses it? Who says
Right.
you are now being fined? We can have our law office if they can do something like that and send it, I'm absolutely all for it.
Okay.
Condemnation is a whole nother level of ownership, if we end up going to a process where we end up, and they're like, okay, it's your problem now. That's not a good situation, because it'll cost us a lot of money to get rid of it. And we've run into that. You want to work with these mortgage companies if they are claiming that it's going to end up in HUD's hands and at some point be up for sale. You'd prefer it be sold to somebody at a reasonable rate who thinks they can turn it back into a usable property. If we end up with it, I think our only solution is demolition.
I don't think so. I think that
Then we could sell
you'd
it.
have to do a cost benefit of what's it, and you could ask for an estimate or a quote or whatever on what are the legal fees going to be to get that to auction. So you know, what does it take for your municipality to do the proper paperwork, give the proper notifications, get it into our ownership, and then immediately put it to auction?
Yeah.
I mean, I made those threats verbally to a number of people over a year ago, and they just, it's like, are you kidding me? You don't even know where we are. You know, you call a company in I believe it's Idaho, and you end up talking to somebody in Georgia. And
It probably, you know, I think it would be a question of, okay, how soon can you get a court paperwork filed? Because as soon as it's in the court, then they hire local counsel and then you can do
This is why we have you right here on this board. But find out what we can
okay.
do.
It's the board.
Because they kept, yes, you're authorized. We were told, I was told that, oh, there's a local company, two guys who go around and make money from these, making sure everything's fine and safe. And on 2 occasions when I talked to them, they did end up they went and secured the building again. I guess they looked at the chimney op thing that I was concerned about and decided it wasn't a problem. So if you ever see anybody there, because they do come around every now and then, any of us who stop and just get as much information as you can and,
Okay.
to mess.
I'll
But please.
work on it. And the very quick comment is that my family and I went over to Lake Perrin the other day, and the boathouse is so amazing. It's just, I mean, we got a big return on investment with that. You know, they've asked us to help out, but they've raised a lot of money themselves, and it's really turned out amazing. If you have an opportunity to go and check it out, it's
New kitchen,
really great asset.
good concessions.
That's great.
If anybody has old canoes or kayaks that they'd like to maybe donate,
That's what, yeah.
I donated a canoe last year to them, and they need to build a rack that they could lock and everything. But the other thing they need, as Marlene said, is they don't have any life jackets right now. So if anybody has old lying around, they'd take them. It's a fabulous place. Another cool thing, I was just talking to Dahlia Wood, who is involved with the Park McCullough House, and asked her. They had a free open house the first day, opening day. It was free, and I said, "Well, how many people showed up?" And she said about 450.
Wow.
And she said, considering the largest numbers ever before were 40. Wow. That's the power of social media, which is what she's been, you know, and getting. So that bodes well too for what's happening in the community, and they've done restoration on the carriage barn foundation and the roof, and now there's a massive project with the greenhouse has been fully dismantled and is going to be rebuilt to historical spec with new cypress, new glazing, and that's through grants from the Fund for North Bennington, as well as a lot of private donations surrounding the Highland Hall Garden. So get over there and take a look. Oh, and one other thing. This Saturday, if anybody went online and ordered trees through that Arbor Day project through the state, they were allowing access to like up to 4 trees per property. It happened all kind of quick. They ran out real quick. If you did that this Saturday at the monument, you need to pick up your trees and get them planted. And I have agreed to take those that get left there to bring back somewhere here, probably over at the Highland Hall Garden, and hold. And if there are people who missed out and are looking to put a tree on their own property, there might be some available. We'll know more next week. It was part of a project looking at underserved communities and how the state, in conjunction with the Arbor Day, could get trees in the hands of people where it would kind of help you decide where to plant it on a map of your property for best energy conservation purposes, creating shade. These aren't the kind of thing, these aren't the little spruce trees you get from Arbor Day. These are, 2 and 3 gallon, maybe up to 1 inch diameter trees. So if the program's successful, we might see it come around again. Executive, or do you have some?
No, I think I have something for executive.
Okay.
Personnel wise.
Yeah.
Before we go to that, do we want to set a date for the
Yes.
end of month meeting?
Yes,
And do a
thank you, Bill.
continuation?
Thank you.
Does anybody care, looking at the week of the 26th to the 30th, what day, I could do any day with enough notice, I think that would,
I'm
you're gone?
gone. I leave a week from Friday, and I'm going.
Vacay?
Good for you.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I probably won't
Well, you don't
need
need
any discussion because, it's just to approve the warrant.
This is
so-
just a very quick,
Really approving warrants, yeah.
What
So
are we
just
looking
a
at?
quorum.
June, somewhere between the 26th and the 30th?
Yeah,
Lori had suggested, I think, that the prudential
We're having a
meeting was
prudential
gonna
meeting on
be
the
on the 27th.
Yes.
Lori had suggested maybe doing it half an hour before that.
That would be
Yeah.
6:30 on the 27th.
yep, can we do 5:45? Because I'm gonna have to do a swap over with Maria before she goes to the Prudential Committee.
I'd rather have I'd rather do it a little bit earlier.
Is that doable?
Yeah.
So we're shooting for 5:45.
This will be at the library, in the school library.
And I think that was confirmed.
Yeah, I think we've
of
just
a-
finalized it, this afternoon. It looked like we got a quorum of people to,
5:45.
June 27th.
yep.
So do we need a motion for that one to continue the meeting?
Right, so make a motion to continue the meeting till 5:45 PM on,
June 27th.
yes.
I will make that motion.
Do we have a second?
And it'll be at the school library.
At the school.
Okay.
Everybody get that
Okay.
at the school.
Yeah. Continue.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For the continuation, and then we have a brief executive session.
I'll move that we move into executive session for contracts or?
Personnel.
Personnel.
Payroll matter.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.